Hello, everyone, and welcome back into another episode of the EPAN to the UKB pod, where I'm your host, Drew Pitzer, joined by my other co-host, Josh Carpenter. And today, we have a very special guest with us. We have Coach Tony Miller from Bob Jones University joining us on the pod today. Coach Miller, obviously, you have a bunch of other things you do as well, too. You have a very successful podcast, a quick timeout as well, a bunch of short games, small-sided games that you also really preach about a lot. And I love that you're so analytically minded. We just want to give you a quick second to kind of introduce yourself before we get started, my friend.
No, I appreciate you guys having me on. Yeah, I'm Coach Miller from Bob Jones University, like the guy said, and this will be I think it's my 14th year there at the university. Been an assistant coach up to this year, and then this year took over as the head coach there at the school. I also teach. I'm a teacher really at heart, and that's who I am, and I enjoy that. Been doing that for even longer than I've been coaching. So basketball just another classroom for me. And I've always tried to be in my teaching at the forefront. Not that I'm coming up with anything, but just trying new techniques and trying to be up to date on current things, helping my students learn as best they can. And so any of those things that you just mentioned are just an effort to help them learn better, learn faster, understand better. Analytics has allowed us to be able to do that. So, yeah, combination of all the things you just said, intentional about those things, but still learning myself and trying to get better all the time.
For sure.
Sure.
And Josh, before I kind of hand it over to you, I was looking back at your Substack and all the different interviews that you had. I mean, you have a huge catalog of work dating back to over 4 years ago. I mean, just looking at some of the names: Seth Greensburg, Jerry Stackhouse, Richard Pitino, C.J. Watson, Scott Drew, Donnie Jones, and a guest that we had on here, Kevin Carroll, as well. I mean, how are you able to get those guys on here and be able to pick their brain and also teach, like how you say you've always been a teacher at heart? How are you able to get those guys on there in one common vision to be able to spread whatever you're trying to give about the game of basketball?
Yeah, one of the things that I've been a teacher of is sport marketing and social media. And so got into that almost about a decade ago, maybe even a little bit longer than that. And have really tried to leverage that, not necessarily for creating a personal brand, although it's kind of turned into that, but as a way to share the game and then to also learn. And it just kind of evolved where I ended up partnering with a couple different brands that then are connected with other coaches, and so made connections through the World Wide Web with them, and kind of built those relationships virtually. I'm kind of a basket nerd. That's what I'm getting tabbed as when I
Yeah.
when I go into stadiums to watch practices or whatever. It's kind of funny. Like the coaches will come over and introduce me to the other guys on the staff and be like, "Dude, these are the basketball junkies. This is the
Yep.
basketball junkie." And so, coaching, I love it because there are so many good people that really just want to help you out. And so I've been the recipient of that and tried to pay that forward as well. But a lot of those guys that you just mentioned have been very generous of giving some time and, kind of developed those internet friendships that I've able to benefit from, and hopefully they've benefited some from me as well.
I think it's definitely a mutual beneficial relationship, and just the fact that you spend so much time teaching. I think that's super dope and great perspective that you have, Josh.
Yeah, for sure. Like once I started getting into the Twitter verse of basketball coaches, it was like impossible to not see your face. And I think Chris Oliver's the other guy. I think he runs this basketball immersion. I saw your two faces everywhere. So I've watched a lot of your content, but you guys have like almost pioneering this new group. When did you really start thinking of this newer way to teach basketball? Like, when did it change from the old school style to maybe when you started? When did it click? Like, man, there's really more stuff that we could be doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's really how you just described it for yourself. I did. It's just that I did it about, like I said, 8, 9 years ago. It was guys like Chris Oliver, who has become another kind of internet friend, but been cool because then I've actually met him in person and gone to some of his clinics and that kind of thing. And so Chris has been one. Brian McCormick is another one who has been doing this for a really long time with small sided games, and, the constraints led approach is another one. A couple guys that those that follow kind of in these circles that you're just talking about, but Doug Novak is another one who's become a friend, and I learned a lot from him. And those guys all have kind of like shared ideas in different venues and different places. The idea of whether it's CLA or small sided games, it's not unique to this new brand. I think part of it's just remarketing of something that has been around for a while. But I think again, going back to the idea of helping players learn better about the game itself rather than just learning skills in isolation. That's something that we've all tried to do. I think it's just doing it better. So exploring new ways to do it better, and those guys have been really good about providing ideas of how we can do what we're doing or what has been done for a really long time, but doing
Hmm.
it better. And that's really what I hope to convey. It's not like I haven't come up with any of these things. It's just taking things that we have done and asking ourselves, is this the best way that we could do this? And so I'm not really here to poo poo on whether it's 3-man weave or shell drill or
Yeah.
chop speed on a closeouts or whatever. I'm not here to knock anybody that does that or rain on anybody's parade with those things. It's just I'm constantly asking, is there a better way to do this? And same thing with analytics. It's how can we use these to help what we're doing and make better decisions and more informed decisions. And I think that really kind of is reflective of having that learner's mindset, that growth mindset, where it's not just, you know, this is what my coach did. My coach had 10 championships. It's good enough for him. That's good enough for me. Like,
Right.
I'm sure he was an awesome coach and did a great job. And I'm not, again, pooing on anything that he did before. Like, but is there a better way to do it now? And we all talk about how players are different and the way that they think is different. Okay, well, then if they're different, and that's going to require us to do some things differently.
Different.
Of course.
And so, again, it's not throwing out all of the old, but it's, can we do things better, do things differently?
Yeah, I've seen that a lot too, especially more recent than later. There's a lot of negativity around it right now. Like how you were saying, like there's a lot of coaches, and I think a lot of them might not even be coaches, but they're on here like saying, "You guys didn't invent this. You guys, we were doing this 20 years ago." And it's like you said, it's not about the individual drills or practice approaches. Is that you never closed off your brain to learning. Once you
Right.
close off your ability to learn new things, that's when you start to struggle. So I don't think people want credit for all these things, but it's the main principle is that we're not closing off our ability to learn new things because we can always be better.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, for sure. Totally agree.
So I guess like when we speak on the analytics, and I'm as a broadcaster for basketball and football, I read stats religiously, and I think numbers, men lie, women lie, numbers don't. But sometimes I think they can they can be obscured. So when I ask you, how do you approach player development, and what type of analytics do you use to really judge overall improvement?
So, I mean, this was one of those where, again, I somebody taught to me and helped me with, but Dean Oliver's Four Factors, and I think it may even been the first time I paid close attention to stuff was with Chris Oliver talking about them. But really, the game boils down to our effective field goal percentage, how well we rebound the basketball, whether or not we turn it over or not, and then our free throw rate. How many times do we get there, and how many times do we actually score? And
Mhm.
even though there's nothing new in that, coaches have known that for a really long time. However, again, I'm trying to make this as simple for me to understand, but then also for my players to understand as well. And just simply looking at those four factors helps me in preparing even our practices on a daily basis. When you come to our practices, unless it's some kind of like warm up drill or something, you're not going to see a lot of fluff. You're going to see us basically doing something or a couple of those things in a single drill. So you're not going to see us diving on the ground for loose balls. That's super important. That can sometimes be something that we feel like wins us the game or loses us the game, even though we know that's not the case. There's an additional, 40 minutes, 39
Yeah.
minutes and 55 seconds that are played. But in those 5 seconds, diving on the floor is important, but you're not going to see us diving on the floor for loose balls in a practice. I'm spending more time, on rebounding small sided games and playing 5-on-5 and anything, free throws, practicing under pressure free throws as many different ways in games and in really short, water break type drills and that kind of thing. So that has made for me practice planning has allowed me to like hone in on what's important because again this is about what matters most. This is not about just what matters but what matters most to winning. And if those four things matter most, if those things are going to determine whether or not we win a game, then those are the four things I better be spending the majority, if not all of my time practicing.
Mhm.
And even when we communicate it to our players, we communicate it to them in those four factors. On the defensive side, it's like the flip side of that. So how do we keep them from scoring? We talk a lot about kills, turkeys,
Mhm.
3 stops in a row, however you know, terminology you use for that. What is that? Well, that's keeping them from having a high effective field goal percentage. And then how do you actually go about doing that? Well, with our system, this is what it looks like. So it really allows me to again focus on practice planning those things that actually matter. It allows me to help the players to understand what matters most. You know, because again, if you try to emphasize 100 things, nothing will be important in their minds.
Yeah.
But if I can focus in on just a handful of things, then we can become great at those things. And if those things are actually the things that win you a basketball game, then I feel like that increases the chances that we will then win the basketball game.
Of course. For sure. No, that makes sense. And Josh, before kind of give it back to you, you speak on those four factors: the effective field goal percentage, rebounding, turnover margin, and free throw percentage. Really, that all equates back to your PER and your player efficiency rating. I don't know if you try to chart that with your guys day in and day out, even have like kind of a practice chart. How do you break that down whenever you're going through, beginning of the season, getting through training camp, and getting ready for these games? How do you are able to basically pick up a starting lineup and different type of sets and rotation methods?
Yeah, so part of that has to do with like the systems that we run and who's good in those systems and helping us generate high percentage shots and get rebounds and force the turnovers and get the deflections and not turn the ball over. Great decision makers and make the free throws. Again, that those things. There's kind of like some offshoots of those things, of each
Right.
of those things that then helps me determine what the lineup's going to be and that sort of thing. But of course, with my education background, I'm thinking even about like research and research methods. Like you don't base something off of one game. So
Of course.
I need a big sample size. So we're a small college. So when people say this, I have empathy, but I also say it is capable. If it matters to you, then you will measure it. And that's doing this. It's
Hmm.
tracking the things that do measure.
Of
And you may
course.
not have a staff of 15 people, but you may be able to have one person that you say, okay, excuse me, we're going to track these 5 things. These 5 things are the most important things.
Hmm.
So you determining what those things are, and then, all right, those are the things that we're going to measure on a daily basis. We do have a couple more people that we can track things with, and we do track. I actually got this from a newer internet friend, but Coach Travis Steele. And so Coach Steele is a great guy, and they do a hustle and have a hard hat that we give out.
Yeah.
And our guy that has the highest hustle stat
Yep.
number at the end, the cumulative stat at the end. And so even rewarding people, we hand out weekly awards. So we'll track things on an app. I don't remember what the name of the app is, but it's a
Hmm.
very simple push button app that you could have a manager do it or somebody, and just keeps track of basic stats. At the end of the week, we accumulate everything, and on Monday, we hand out. I got this from Coach Tobin Anderson, but Coach Anderson is a friend of the guy who I work for, and we hand out figurines. So we have a figurine and a Batman figurine, and then a giant. I work with Dr. Dish basketball. We have a giant Dr. Dish basketball trophy,
Oh,
and so
dude.
we each one of those represents something. One of them is effective field goal percentage. One of them's the highest 3-point shooter. One of them's the best rebounder for the week. Another one I think we have is maybe like the most deflections for the week. That's a really big important
That's a
stat.
huge number right there. That yeah,
Yeah.
wish more would keep track of.
So we'll hand those out on Monday, and then those guys get to put those at their locker, and people come in and visit and ask what they're about. And I think it's kind of corny and goofy. We have postseason meetings, and that's like one of the number one things that guys say, "Yeah, keep doing that. That's really cool. We like when you guys
Exactly.
hand out the awards." So even just reinforcing the things that I just told you matter most and track most help us determine who should be playing, when they should be playing. Keeping track of all of those stats, I'll also say this, makes player meetings a whole lot easier when they come in and say, why am I not
Okay.
playing? It becomes something that's very objective rather than just something that's it's not my opinion as the coach.
Yeah.
So I have very few meetings where there's any emotion. involved on my part. I just basically just hand him the sheet. I was just having a conversation with somebody connected with this the other day, and why is he not playing? And so I just said he's shooting 24% from the 3-point line. He's shooting 38% from the field. He's minus 12 in efficiency. Would you play him?
No.
And when you have those kinds of stats, the conversations become very brief, and they actually have, again, they have very little emotion. It's not me against them.
Yeah.
It's not trying to make enemies, and I want them all to succeed. And having communicating that through the stats, I think, is a very helpful way to help them see what they actually need to get better at, rather than just you just telling them like, you're not shooting well, you need to be able to shoot better, you need to be able to make more free throws, you need to be able to, because typically in the minds of the person who's listening to that, they're like, but I make shots, I make free throws. Like, you're right, you do make, but you only make them at 24%, and I have the last 25 practices to
Yeah.
demonstrate that.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you said, that's a volume number.
Right. That becomes a little bit more. There's more meat behind that. There's more emphasis behind that. There's more legitimacy behind that statement when I have those kinds of stats. So again, I think it really boils down to like you figuring out as a coach what matters most to your program, and then for you to, if it matters, then it needs to be measured, and
Yeah.
it needs to be measured on a consistent basis, and then do something with those stats. Don't just have a lot of cool numbers somewhere. Use them in conversations to help players actually get better.
For sure. Yeah. The question that I've been most excited to ask you since we knew we were going to do this pod was because I have a lot of albums on my phone that I've screenshotted by sections, coaching advice, coaching philosophies. How can you, in your unique situation, how are you not overwhelmed with the amount of information that you've gotten at every level, offensively, just every level of a program, all the information and conversations you've had and continue to see every day? How are you not overwhelmed and constantly thinking, man, I should change this because I had this idea? Like, how is that not overwhelming? Because it's overwhelming for me just seeing it on Twitter every day.
Yeah, I heard somebody during the pandemic talk about the fact that you have so much knowledge available to you. It's not the availability and the gathering of knowledge that's going to be the differentiator going forward. It's going to be the person who has the ability to sift through that and determine what matters to their program. And so that I hear that, I'm like, that's really great, but that's not for us. Or that's really great, but I might be able to use that later. And so even through all the conversations that I have, I'll try to take one, two, or three things from somebody, and that's where I say, again, I've never come up with anything. Everything that I have is either borrowed or stolen.
Hmm.
And in coaching, I think that's a great way to go about doing it. However, I do hear a lot of people, even when I was younger, getting the advice like, don't try to be somebody else. And I agree with that. But two, you don't have to fumble your way through, especially when you're starting out. Grab things from other people that you resonate with,
Yeah.
like something that they say that you resonate with, and kind of be alert to what your personality is. If you don't like, have some people in your life, if you're not very self-aware, if you can't do that on your own, that will say to you like, yeah, this is kind of like who you are, and it looks like these are the kinds of things that you enjoy, or these things that you value. And I'm really big on like what your core values are in
Right.
the culture of your program. Again, another word that coaches don't like, but I think is
Yeah.
super important. I think we need to like bring it back and
Yeah.
revitalize it. But like, I'm really big on your core values. And then to your point, to take things that match or are in line with what your core values are. That will help you kind of weed out the stuff that you don't need to be paying attention to, or that maybe isn't the best use of your time, and holding on to the things that reinforce or support what your core values are for your program and for yourself.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of guys on Twitter and YouTube that they might have coached for a while or a long time, and now they're kind of more in the coaching advice realm. And I've watched a lot of their content and saw a lot of things they say, and I think to myself, eye test shows me that this should be the best coach of all time. I'm like,
Yeah.
this guy literally knows everything, it seems like, and he gives you the blueprint to do it. And then I'm like, well, how's it not translate? What do you personally think is the biggest gap? Because it's like there's some geniuses out there that I look at on Twitter. I'm like, this is the best coach. This should be the best coach of all time right now. They know everything.
Um, I think that I was talking to my players to this about this today. I can have the best plays in the world. I can have the best blueprint in the world. But unless you got the Jimmies and the Joes, your X's and O's don't matter one bit.
Yep.
And there's a lot of things that go into that to be honest with you, I think just first of all, our culture gives too much credit to coaches. The fact of the matter is, like, if you got good players, then you can probably win some games. Now, I've seen plenty of coaches on the flip side of that that can screw up a lot of things, but it really comes down to players. And I'll just say, I've experienced this a little bit, and I'm experiencing this even in the position that I am now. There's a lot of things that kind of like, I wouldn't say handcuff, but that that are outside of a coach's control as to whether or not they
Hmm.
and that could at the college level, especially high school coaches, you get this. I think they think that college coaches, well, you can go get anybody you want to. Like,
Yep.
that's not how that works at all.
Yep.
Like, fits for school. You may be very limited because of the kind of school that you are, or because of the kind of school that they allow the kinds of students that come into it. High school students, you know that. I mean, high school
Hmm.
coaches, you know that. Like, whoever's in your district or whoever sneaks into your district living with some quote unquote Aunt Susie, and now all of a
Hmm.
sudden you're a great coach because you got Jimmy who doesn't even live in your city or your county or your state, but now is on your team. So there's a lot of things like that that are outside of control. I would
Hmm.
just say, like, as you're looking at those guys, evaluate the kinds of things that they're saying and the things that, again, maybe fit in line with what your core values are or with the game itself, like how it's being played at the higher levels and that kind of stuff. And
Hmm.
again, I feel like you can learn from anybody. I'm just the older I'm getting, the more I'm thinking like in a lot of cases, not all cases, but in a lot of cases, numbers for wins and losses is overrated because again, you may have a great coach that has determined because of who he is and what he values, he's going to stay in some tiny school in the middle of nowhere,
Yep.
but he gets to impact kids that he really connects with and values, and he ends up with 20 losses every single year. But man, that dude knows all kinds of X's and O's, and he's making an impact on people's lives that's going to last far beyond basketball.
Right.
And
Yep.
then, like I said, on the flip side, there's a guy who wins 30 games a year, but he just knows people and has connections to everybody and gets players in and wins, but that doesn't mean he's a good coach either.
Yep.
Makes sense.
Exactly.
So,
I wanted to touch on this before I pass it back, Drew. We were talking to a high school coach last night about, and he was big on the grassroots problem he thinks in America, which that's a pretty trendy topic right now. Just like the lack of development in a younger age. Do you think that I watched a lot of mid majors games last week, and especially coaches that I've seen talk conceptually about offense, and I'm like, I know it's early in the season, but I'm like, I don't know if some of these players out here even have this basketball IQ at the college level to play this way. So I was thinking,
Makes sense.
how was every young coach in my state in West Virginia saying we're running conceptual offense? I'm like, how are you guys running this when mid-major players I see out here are struggling to make reads in a college basketball game? Do you think the
That's a good
young
question.
generation is the most important for it to develop, and how can we fix the grassroots issue?
what I'm noticing as I talk with coaches and then obviously just studying and watching is that the guys who are I'm probably even kind of at the higher end, 42. It's the guys like John Shire and guys who are kind of in between. Bob Ritchie is another one. Like it's those guys that are now coming to the forefront and really being like the guys that are pushing that here in the US at the college level. It's happening at the NBA level already.
Yeah.
And kind of moving off the scene are the guys who have historically coached the game of basketball like football. And I was just having this conversation with a couple of soccer coaches recently. The game of basketball is being played more and coached more like soccer now than it has before, which is it was more like run our plays, run our sets, come down the floor, everybody stop, look at the coach, call something. Like hardly anybody plays like that anymore because they know that's just, but that's how it was played 25 years ago. Maybe not totally, but in large part, running plays, running sets, running the same continuity over and over and over. And it modeled football. Well, go back and look at who a lot of the basketball coaches were, 50 years ago. They were football coaches.
Right.
And so the, I agree it does need to change at the grassroots level. But I will say this. There's a lot of coaches who say they want to coach conceptually, but they don't exactly know how to teach it. And so they see elements of it, but the guys that you were indirectly referring to, Josh, those guys who are on the internet advising and counseling others, they're a lot of them are trying to teach people how to teach it conceptually. And that's hard to grasp because we didn't grow up on that.
Right.
And so, like, how do I help my players understand concepts? And a real big one is how do I help them string concepts together to just keep playing? That's another one where I don't know that a lot of coaches really understand triggers and that kind of thing. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a ton of room for growth. And I've never heard the skill of decision making talked about as much as I ever have before. It's all
Hmm.
been dribbling and ball handling and some passing, but a lot of
Which is
shooting.
crazy that it ever got. It almost got flipped. Why did it ever get flipped from that in the beginning? It's
And
kind
it
of weird.
sounds
Yeah, people want to have their best basketball players who might not necessarily have the highest basketball IQ make decisions consistently and wondering why they're turning the ball over all the time or taking terrible shots. I just feel like
It just
it's,
Yeah, it
you
sounds like
know,
to me people are like, okay, if we're gonna teach you how to drive a car, but we're not gonna teach you how to press the gas yet. We're gonna show you how to use the AC. And I'm like, why did we stop teaching them how to do? This is the whole
little
purpose of skill
things.
development. The whole purpose is skill development. Why did we ever shift away from what really mattered in the first place?
And you've heard it from coaches for years. They practice something, then immediately go to scrimmage, and the guys don't do it. And they say, we just
Hmm.
worked on that. Why don't you? But they hadn't worked on that. What they had
No,
worked on is a skill, a physical skill. They hadn't worked on the decision making that was needed to make that skill work. And that's where you hear, again, I'm always trying to make things as simple as possible. And this is from Chris Oliver. It's perception, what did you see? Decision, so what did I see? Then determines what I do decision wise. And then skill. Excuse me. We've gotten those out of order. And we've also just practiced skill. So we don't even
Yep.
practice the what do you see
the mental
to make
side.
the right decision, then use the skill. And so it's like trying to bake a cake without using flour. Like you can do all the other stuff. You can heat up the oven. You can do all the stuff at the very end. But if you haven't made it at the beginning, don't expect the cake to come out.
Do you think the
Right.
legendary coaches in the past, like going back to 20, 30 years ago, do you think the ones that were the best, do you think they still had some of that in there without knowing exactly how to label it?
Yeah.
Raleigh definitely did.
Bob Knight was one. If
Yeah.
you go back and talk to people who played for Coach Knight, I think
Hmm.
I've had at least one or two on the podcast that have, or at least like known him. They'll talk about stuff that he did. I mean, the dude, he did his motion offense was a lot of decision making in it,
Yeah.
but he would play small sided games. Yo, we've been playing small sided games forever. Like
Literally ever.
we actually combine stuff that we make fun of. We did 3-man weave and then came back 2-on-1. We did a really
That's
fancy.
great.
Some
Yeah.
of you got super fancy and you did a 5-man weave and came back 3-on-2.
Right,
Yep.
right.
Yep.
So this isn't new. It's like we said at
Yep.
the very beginning. It's not new. It's just that we do it more now because we know how important the decision making is. And now we're more strategic about it. We don't just check it up and play 3-on-3. We don't just
Hmm.
check it up and play 1-on-1. We start out with a small advantage, or we use it. We
For
start
the
with a
match point.
ball screen. Yeah, we start with a ball screen and a guy in the back side, so that we're playing, shake from behind, throw it back, throw it into the post, go into split action, go into a grenade, play to a single side, throw it along the baseline for a baseline drift. Like those are all concepts that I just strung together. If you go back and listen to that, so go ahead and hit the back 2 times,
Yeah.
you're going to see that that's actually the flow and the progression that typically college and NBA teams do. They're
Yep.
able
Yeah,
to string those concepts together, but there was no opportunity to shoot there because the defense played well. But
Yep.
I made the next decision and played to the next action to generate a shot eventually. And so we haven't talked about this, but like one of the most important things I told you, effective field goal percentage. Well, you better be teaching your players about shot selection, and
of course.
you better be doing drills about shot selection. And it better not be this is a good shot, this is not a good shot, because there's a billion different types of shots. You better have something concrete that communicates to them
That's
What brought
film
that
too.
about?
Like that's breaking down film, especially with your position coach or if you have a skill guy. Like, hey, you're shooting the ball at a 37% clip from the right corner, but whenever you put the ball on the floor, you take one dribble, it drops 10 to 15%. Or if you're catching it on the left wing and you just go straight up and down, you're shooting at a 25% clip. That's where you got to be able to break it down in those type of zones, and that's what I really love about watching your film.
Yeah, yeah. And so like those kinds of numbers again take the emotion out of it and help them understand to make better decisions. That's what this is
Right.
all about, is about making better decisions so that and again, this is where you can as a coach you can communicate this, which I didn't do a good job of this early on. But now when I go into a conversation like that, I'm not saying to them, that's a bad shot. You need to take better shots. I'm saying to them, Drew, when you put the ball on the floor, your percentage goes down by 5%. But if you caught that ready to shoot right away,
Right.
you'd
Yeah,
shoot it from 35. And if you shoot it from 35, you score more points, we win more games, and I look like a better coach. This
yeah,
isn't
Yep.
me against Drew. This is,
no,
and now Drew's like, yo, coach, brother, you're on my side, man. Yo, I appreciate you telling me that.
Exactly.
I'm more than happy to take that shot next time.
yeah. And high school kids more than ever, you can see in their face when a coach says, "Man, that's a bad shot." Instantly, you can see their whole effort, their demeanor,
Just
especially the
drops.
younger you get.
Yep.
Instantly. I wanted to ask you: do you think the Izzos and the Bill Selfs and the Coach Barnes of the world, have you seen that they've made changes or adjusted to the way that plays elevated over the years? And is that why they've stayed so successful, or is there things that they still do that they've always done
I
from a
think those guys,
schematic?
if you actually go back and like relook at stuff from early on, you're gonna see that they were kind of almost like revolutionary in emphasizing the stuff that we just said matters. I mean, you think about Tom Izzo. What do you think? What's like one of the, if not the first thing you always think about?
I think
You're always
toughness,
you think about toughness, and where does toughness demonstrated typically the most?
On the
rebounding.
boards and defensively?
In rebounding and defense. Well, that's one of those factors that if you dominate that category, your chances at winning grow exponentially. You get offensive rebounds, that's like you get five more offensive rebounds than the other team. That's like
I'm
giving
a
them
possession.
that's a five possession head start. And that means that probably out of those five times, they're going to score on two, three times of those. Okay, so basically going into every game, Drew, if I give you a five possession lead and you score on three of them, we're starting the game 6-0 every single game.
Exactly.
And so those guys, I think, if you went back and looked, and it's sad that I know this because I'm now old, and so I remember 25 years ago watching those guys. Like they were emphasizing things and playing stylistically the way that we're playing now and calling it modern basketball. And I talk a lot about I term them consecutive actions and multiple actions. I say a consecutive action is something where you have to guard something and immediately guard something else. So, for instance, like a stagger screen, you have to guard a down screen and a down screen again. Well, you involve three defenders in that, and it becomes very confusing for that defense a lot of times.
Communication
That
right
creates
there,
a
though.
lot of advantages. Yeah. This is why we love Zoom. You have to guard a down screen and a handoff, two advantage creating situations, multiple actions. While there's a zoom going on over here, there's a hammer going on the other side, which is eliminating help defense. Dudes just standing there waiting for something to happen to rotate over. Now they have to interchange or talk or guard a down screen on this side while this is happening over there. Dude, go back and watch some of the guys that you just mentioned, Josh. You're going to see
Mhm.
those things like 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, it's
So
so crazy when you think about high school because like high school, there's not even a shot clock. If you ran those things that you just said, there's no shot clock. Run it
Just keep
until
on
you get
setting
a
it
good
over.
shot. I can't believe
Yeah,
that
wide
there's
open
high
three
school
or
kids
layup.
out there. How do you ever take a bad shot in a high school game? If that's all you'd have to get them to
Bad
understand. So
basketball IQ.
schematically, in the half court offense, so you still think Coach Cal and Self and all those guys, they're still kind of doing the same thing from like a half court offensive standpoint.
Just adjusted from what they used to run in 2000. It's just basically now instead of trying to get mid range jumpers, they're trying to get wide open threes and layups. That's just all they've just changed the game in that way.
It's again understanding, the most basic analytic offensively is just understanding the three pointer is worth one and a half more times than a two pointer is. It's like basic math. So you can talk about how you don't like all the threes being shot, but you're fighting against stats that are just common sense at the end of the
Yeah, I
day.
don't mean to interrupt you, but think about it. You shoot 100 twos and you shoot 100 threes, right? If you go 30 for 100, you shoot 30% clip, and you're going to end up with 90 total points. And you go, let's say you go 40 for 100 from the from inside the 3 point line, you're only scoring 80. So right there, you might have shot about 10 to 15% less from the field, but effectively you're still getting more points on the board. That's why I love it. It's kind of backwards a little bit, but I think that's how you have to understand the game.
Yeah.
Coach, do you think that that could vary ever by your team personnel and your level of skill?
That was my next question.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, again, there's coaches. I do hate this. Like, there's always coaches that listen and they're like, "You don't understand. My team can only," and then like fill in the blank. I get that. I mean, my team changes from year to year too. Like one year we may shoot 90% from, or 84% from the free throw line, and then the next year we shoot like 71. Like, I get that. Well, then that will probably have to change somewhat stylistically what we do. However, I will also say this: you need to practice the things that you think are going to win you the games. Like, practice them the most. Practice them all the time. Stop doing those other drills. Like, the college game again is different from high school in regards to like a lot of things. One of them being the charge rule. Like, I don't practice taking charges anymore. I don't. There's no point in doing that. I need to spend that 5 or 10 minutes working on shooting, and
Yeah,
especially after our first 4 games, I need to practice even more time on shooting.
yeah,
And so, like, I get that, but in my opinion, there's always an answer to whatever you say. Yeah, but. Like,
yep.
I understand you have limitations, and your limitations will be different from my limitations. But there is a way. There is a way if you look for a way.
With your team specifically, what have you learned in the first few games and everything that you've thought about and philosophy wise as a head coach? How has it been different? What have you learned so far just from these first few games?
Yeah, I kind of had the advantage the last 4 years. The guy that I was working for, he had some health problems, and so, I was the head coach for 2/3 of the year when the group that I have as seniors were freshmen. So it's kind of cool. They kind of had me as like their head coach their freshman year, and now have me again. And then in between, I was filling in, and I did more just because of his health and because he trusted me. We had been together a long time, and he was really trying to develop me, for which I am forever grateful. And so, I had the advantage stylistically of knowing when I came in what I wanted to do. And that's what I would say with like head coaches or assistant coaches who are waiting to become head coaches. Like, pay attention to what your coach does. Always be loyal to him, but also be like taking notes. Like, is that something that you want to do when you become a head coach? Is that
I
Yeah,
love
something
that.
that fits you? Just because your head coach does it, that may not fit you. I'll just
yeah,
give you one example that may, because some may be like, I don't understand what that means. There are some people out there who can be pressing coaches. There are other people out there who you like the idea of being a pressing coach, but being a great pressing coach, I feel like requires kind of a different level, or it has different requirements to it. And so, like, you being able to realize this fits who I am. This fits. I'll even say this from like our program. If any of you that's listening, like, you go and look us up, fits the kind of kids that you have. You may want to be a pressing kids, but you got.
The
hmm
cardio.
I had a
yeah,
an AD one time. He goes, "Well, coach, we may be short, but we're slow." And it was kind of like a joke, like, you just may not have the Jimmies and the Joes to be
yeah,
able to press full court for the entire game or whatever.
yeah. I wanted
But
to ask
you
you quickly
can.
about that. Do you know West Liberty and Nova Southeastern? We're from West Virginia. Have you ever had any interaction with any of those guys from that
Yeah,
tree? And what do you think of
I
their?
haven't played any of them, either of them, but I do know who you're talking about.
Yeah, old Crutchfield, man. That's the goat to us.
I wanted to ask in your losses, coach, when you look at the stats, look at the analytics from the games you've lost, have you thought, is there anything you can do to offset a poor shooting game to where it doesn't feel like you're just rolling the dice of that our numbers are going to fall our way because we're going to shoot this many times? Like, is there things that you can put in there to where you're like, I don't want to leave this game to chance.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it goes back to like those four factors. I just rely so heavily on those that if you're not going to shoot well, the numbers say that if you win effective field goal percentage and you win one other category, it often doesn't matter which one, you win the game. If you don't win effective field goal percentage, man, you better be awesome at the other three categories.
Yep.
So, especially like rebounding, even though turnovers is more, but that goes a lot of times to our decision making. Like how well did we make decisions and, find the open man and that kind of thing. So I think rebounding hasn't historically been something that we've really been great at as a program, but this first year, I've emphasized rebounding a ton. And
Yeah.
by the way, you can emphasize rebounding a ton, and it might make you a little bit better. But I'll just tell you this: you're a whole lot better rebounding team when you have taller players. And I got taller
Yeah.
players this year, and we're a better rebounding team. It's not
Exactly.
because I'm the head coach or because I'm great. It's just because I got better Jimmys and Joes again.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So there are things that you can do. I don't want people to listen to this and be like, well, it's just kind of like whoever I got, that's whoever I got. Like, no, you can develop players, but also understand like there are some things that you can control and some things that you can't. So
Size,
control what
speed, strength.
that's
Yeah, you can't.
exactly right.
Yeah, for sure. So
It's a constant like adjusting of the knobs on a audio board or something like that to get
For
the
sure.
perfect mix that you're always tinkering with. But fortunately, we play more games than football does, so you got a lot of chances to be able to mess with the volume levels.
I love that thought of like, how can we limit the ability of chance? Like, if we shoot bad from three this game, because it's going to happen a lot. It's just the way it goes. But how can we manipulate that to where like no matter what we do shooting the ball, if we rebound and we play hard and we take care of the ball, it doesn't matter if we walk the ball up the court and play 2 3 the
control
whole
the
game.
controllables. Yeah.
If we do those things, we can be in any game. So I love limiting that gamble. Because then when you do shoot well, you blow a team out. But Coach, I really appreciate you, man. I've been watching a lot of your content. I know you're super busy. Thank you for taking that time
Yeah.
out to
Thank
talk to us, man.
For sure,
We
man. We
appreciate
could
it.
talk to you all the time, and we're going to definitely try to get you back on here again. But again, this is Coach Tony Miller from Bob Jones University. He's also the owner of a quick timeout through Substack. Make sure you guys check him out. A lot of great basketball information. If you guys want to learn the game and how analytics really work to affect your team, make sure you guys check this guy out. He's one of a kind, a true basketball genius. And Coach Miller, we really appreciate you joining us today on the EPAN to UKV. Drew Pitzer, Josh Carpenter, Coach Tony Miller. And with that being said, we're out. Thank you all.